Okay, it is time for movie plots once again, and we got a film series for you. I have four, and this is the film series of Diary of a Wimpy Kid. We're gonna do the four films, starting with the first one. Then we'll do Roderick Rules, Dog Days, and then The Long Haul. So let's go. So, preteen Greg Heffley illustrates his daily life in a diary. But he says this is a journal, not a diary. Even though it says diary on the front, Greg considers it a journal. Anyway, he says he is writing in one for when he is rich and famous. But for now, he is in middle school, about to start the 6th grade. And Greg lives with his dysfunctional family, consisting of his mom and dad, Susan and Frank, his younger brother, Manny, and his mean older brother, Roderick, who constantly picks on Greg like the bully he is. On Greg's first day of middle school, he quickly discovers the ups and downs, such as the missing stall doors in the boys' bathroom and the difficulties of obtaining a seat during lunch. During gym class, Greg and his best friend Rowley Jefferson escape from a game of Gladiator, and they meet a 7th grade student, Angie Stedman, who isolates herself from the other students to survive middle school. They also notice a moldy piece of Swiss cheese on the basketball court, and Greg almost touches it, but is stopped by their other friend, Sharad Gupta, who tells them about this legend called the cheese touch, which is where whoever touches that moldy cheese will get the cheese touch and will become a social outcast due to everyone being disgusted by the person who touches the cheese. And the only way to get rid of the cheese touch is to pass it on to someone else by touching them. Greg states his intention of becoming the most popular student in school, as well as earning a place in the school yearbook as a class favorite. He came up with that when he was looking through an old yearbook in Roderick's bedroom in the attic, which in reality Greg is not allowed to go up there or else he would get threatened by his brother. So Greg tries everything to get into class favorites, only for several of his attempts to fail. Fast forward to Halloween. Greg and Rowley go out trick-or-treating, and after getting some candy on the north side, where all the rich people live, a group of teenage boys drive by in a pickup truck and spray the two with a fire extinguisher. When Greg threatens to call the cops on those boys, the boys stop their truck and go in reverse, and a chase ensues towards Greg's grandma's house. But the latter to escape the boys after Greg accidentally damages their truck with a weed whacker. And they get chased into the devil worshipper woods. Later on, the boys decide to join the safety patrol team at school. That's like the hall monitor / security guards around the school, in another effort to become popular and try out for a contest that offers a student a chance to become the cartoonist for the school paper. At one point, Greg accidentally breaks Rowley's arm during a dangerous game the duo invented. Rowley, after getting his arm broke and becomes popular, and everyone starts to hang around him. And Rowley also wins the cartoonist contest because of his Zooey Mama invention, making Greg envious of him. During one rainy day, while doing a safety patrol assignment, Greg walks kindergartners down a neighborhood street without Rowley because he couldn't get his cast wet in the rain. But he panics when he encounters a truck identical to the Mean Teenager's truck from Halloween, and hides himself and the kids in a construction zone. He is then confronted by a neighbor named Mrs. Irvine, who mistakes Greg for Rowley. Greg had the audacity to say yes, as it was Rowley. He also had Rowley's coat. And when Mrs. Irvine walks across the street, Greg panics and abandons the kindergartners. To his bewilderment, Rowley is suspended from safety patrol. But Greg eventually confesses his guilt to Rowley, foolishly offering it as a joke and saying that they could both learn lessons from the incident. Distraught and angered over Greg's mistreatment of him, Rowley ends their friendship. When the truth soon comes to light, Greg is fired from the service, while Rowley is reinstated as the team captain and befriends their classmate Colin, who replaces Greg as Rowley's best friend. Greg attempts to pursue the popularity without Rowley, but those efforts also fail. In the middle of as Greg try to survive the night in their nasty neighbor Fragley's house. Fragley is weird, he's gross, and he has bad hygiene issues. Greg also tries to try out for a Wizard of Oz musical. And after hearing Greg's incredible singing voice, the theater teacher almost puts him as Dorothy, but is stopped by the mean girl, Patty Farrell, who is mean to the bone. And she ends up taking the role as Dorothy, and Greg gets put as a singing tree. He was expecting to have armholes so he could throw apples at Dorothy. So the play starts, and soon Greg and the other tree start singing. But Greg immediately freaks out when he sees his brother Roger recording him in the audience. And soon everyone else stops singing. And then Patty Farrell gets extremely upset and threatens to beat up Greg if he doesn't and starts singing. Then a soon apple fight ensues, and it ends with Patty Farrell tackling Greg to the ground. And also, Greg gets his brother Roderick in deep trouble when Greg takes a magazine from his room, gives it to Manny, and when Mom finds the magazine, Manny points at Roderick's backpack, and Roderick got punished for 2 weeks and got his van confiscated. And Greg and his mom and Susan go to a mother-son dance, and he sees Rowley there. He tries to make amends with him, but nothing works. And soon Rowley and his mother get on the dance floor, and they do a intense dance to some Beastie Boys. One day after school, Greg and Rowley confront each other in rage, and a circle of students encourage them to fight as they chant and fight over and over. However, neither of them are good at fighting, and soon the teenagers from Halloween arrive at the scene and force Rowley to eat part of that nasty, moldy Swiss cheese. After the other kids, except for Greg, are chased inside the school, they flee the scene when the school's gym teacher, Coach Malone, arrives. When the other kids come back out and notice the cheese has been eaten, Greg takes the blame to save Rowley's reputation, and they reconcile. At the end of the school year, Greg and Rowley make the yearbook class favorites page as the cutest friends. Well, it's a good thing they got themselves into the class favorites. And I do like this series. Some good stuff comes out of Roderick Rules, and you're about to see why. So, Greg Heffley has just entered the 7th grade. The movie starts with the Heffleys showing up at a roller skating rink. And Greg reunites with his friend Rowley, who soon has become obsessed with magic tricks. And while on the floor doing some roller skating, Greg and Rowley meet this new girl who just showed up at their school named Holly Hills, who is played by the beautiful actress known as Peyton List. She has just joined the 7th grade. And while the roller skating rink goes into couple skating mode, Roderick hacks it and starts playing heavy metal music on the speakers. One morning, before Greg leaves for his first day of 7th grade, Frank and Susan, and the latter of whom is writing a printing column in the local newspaper, tells Greg and Roderick that they need to spend more time together. Susan offers them some play money that she calls mom bucks that they can redeem for real money. When Greg returns home, a local talent show is advertised on TV, and Roderick sees it as the big break for his band Loaded Diaper. At church the following Sunday, Roderick stains Greg's pants with chocolate, making it look like he has defecated himself. And he is humiliated, causing an embarrassing public scuffle between the two and ruining Susan's reputation. As punishment, Susan, Frank, and Manny go on a trip to the water park, Rockin' Rapids, without Greg and Roderick, leaving them home for the weekend to work on their differences. They are also instructed not to invite anyone over. Defying his parents immediately upon their departure, Roderick throws a wild party which Greg and his best friend Rowley end up participating in. And while Greg was originally locked in the basement while the party was going on, Greg had to call Rowley to try and bail him out of that basement, in which he ended up in the basement as well. But are let out after Susan calls the house phone, and the party is put on hold. The next morning, after the party had ended, Greg and Roderick receive a voicemail from Susan and Frank informing them that they will be returning early from their trip due to Manny being ill, prompting them to hastily clean up the trashed house. They then find that someone wrote Roderick Rules on the bathroom door in permanent marker. Greg gets the idea to replace it with the door to the basement. However, after the family gets home, they realize that the replacement door does not have a lock on it, whereas the previous one did. Roderick tells Greg to deny everything, but Susan soon realizes the lock is gone and confronts Greg over it. As Roderick refuses to tell her the truth, Greg confesses that Roderick had people over, but lies saying it was only a band practice, and begs Susan not to punish Roderick, suggesting it would ruin their improving relationship. Susan agrees to this, and Roderick, believing Greg kept their secret, gains respect for him. They start spending more time together, and Roderick attempts to give Greg advice on school and girls, though most of it backfires. One night, when Frank plans to show a slideshow of his Civil War figurines to the editors of Susan's paper, who are visiting the Heffleys, he ends up finding pictures of Roderick's party. This leads to the family arguing and for Susan's editors to refuse to edit her column. Greg becomes grounded for 2 weeks, while Roderick is grounded for a month and is forbidden from participating in the talent show, which leaves him distraught. Having learned that Greg partially admitted the truth to Susan earlier on, Roderick tells Greg that they may be brothers, but will never be friends. Greg and Roderick are punished further by being forced to spend the weekend with their grandfather at his retirement home, much to their dismay. However, Greg runs into Holly Hills at the retirement home when she's visiting her grandmother. Greg and Holly have a talk about their sibling lifestyles, as both of them have a malicious older sibling and a spoiled younger sibling. So she and Greg become really good friends. The next morning, trouble starts to ensue when Roderick steals Greg's diary and makes Greg chase him through the halls in his underwear. And the biggest mistake happened when Greg went to hide in the ladies' bathroom and he gets cornered by a crap load of seniors. The following week, the family goes to see the talent show anyway, where Roderick finds out that he has been kicked out of his own band by Bill Walter, a guitarist that Roderick recently recruited. While Rowley's magic act is in jeopardy due to his assistant having stage fright, reluctant because of his potential humiliation it will cause, Greg strikes a deal with Susan that he will stand in as Rowley's assistant if she lets Roderick perform, which she agrees to. Despite multiple mishaps, the remarkable Rowley and Greg the Great are praised by the audience, including Holly, believing the act is actually a comedy skit and that the mistakes are intentional. The audience isn't, however, as impressed by a loaded diaper until Susan starts dancing at the edge of the stage, prompting the crowd to join in. Frank tapes the footage of her dancing, and he and Greg agree to keep it a secret. Roderick then kicks Bill out of the band in retaliation and reconciles with Greg. Later on, Greg and Rowley later upload the video of loaded diaper being upstaged by Susan's dancing onto YouTube, which goes viral, angering Roderick. It ends with Roderick yelling, "Greg, you are so dead!" That wasn't the first thing they tried to throw on YouTube in this movie. They tried to upload a video of Rowley sitting on a spiky tinfoil ball that Manny originally gave to Greg as an apology. And Rowley ended up sitting on it. That was an immediate mistake. All right, time for Diary of a Wimpy Kid Dog Days. The Heffleys visit the local pool where they run into Lenwood Heath, a reformed delinquent friend of Roderick who works as a lifeguard there. He attends Spag Union, which is a strict disciplinary military school that begins in the 8th grade. Frank notices that Greg is about to start the 8th grade and considers signing him up for Spag Union. After learning that Greg spent his entire first day of summer vacation playing video games, which Frank has forbidden him from doing in the summer, Frank takes away his video games. Susan urges Frank to spend more time with him. Frank takes him fishing into an American Civil War reenactment, but his incompetence annoys Frank. Rowley decides to invite Greg to the local country club. Initially reluctant, he joins Rowley as a guest after learning that his crush Holly Hills teaches tennis there. After Roderick learns that Holly's older sister Heather, whom he has a crush on, also works at the country club, he asks Greg to help him sneak in. Frank surprises Greg with an unpaid summer internship at his office, hoping they can bond. Disliking the idea, Greg lies about getting a job at the country club, to Frank and Susan's delight. Rowley later invites Greg on a family trip to a rented beach house near the boardwalk. Before they leave, Frank and Susan give Greg a starter cell phone that only allows him to call home or 911. Greg becomes increasingly creeped out by how close the Jeffersons are, and he secretly uses Rowley's father Robert's laptop to email Susan to get himself out of the trip. The Jeffersons confront him after he accidentally sends the email to everyone on Robert's contact list. He desperately tries to call home using his new phone, but he accidentally calls 911 instead, leading to Robert almost getting arrested when he accidentally opens the door with a knife in his hand. Greg is sent home early, and Frank starts to believe that Rowley is bad influence. A few days later, Rowley informs Greg that he is no longer allowed to invite him to the country club, but he constantly sneaks in by impersonating members. Greg reconciles with Rowley and gets Loaded Diaper a gig for Heather's upcoming Sweet 16, to Roderick's delight. During another country club visit, Robert confronts Frank and Greg over the latter's purchase of $260 worth of smoothies. Frank mentions that Greg works there, but the manager denies this, learning the truth of Greg's deception. Frank expresses his disappointment with him shortly after. Roderick reveals to him that a Spag Union disc has been mailed to them, to his horror. Roderick urges Greg to go on the Wilderness Weekends camping trip with his classmates to impress Frank. During the trip, Fragley tells a scary story about a muddy hand. Spooked, Greg admits his guilt over constantly messing up. The next day, after overhearing Frank's boss, Stan Warren, insult him over his lack of camping skills, Greg and the others set a trap and sneaks into Stan's tent, where he discovers that the troupe has been cheating by using household appliances. Stan discovers Greg and insults him, but Frank chastises Stan for faking his camping skills. He runs into Greg's trap, humiliating himself. Later on, at a motel on the way home, Frank confesses he never liked camping and decides not to send Greg to Spag Union. To his surprise and delight, he also talks to him about learning from mistakes and taking responsibility, making them both realize they are more alike than they thought. Later, at Heather Hill's Sweet 16, Loaded Diaper performs a heavy metal cover of Baby by Justin Bieber, with Roderick on lead vocals to try and serenade her, only for him to have sour notes. The performance goes fully awry when he accidentally knocks over a huge ice bust of her. She attempts to assault him with a microphone stand and almost committing murder. But instead she smashes a chocolate fountain with the microphone stand after Roderick dodges it, ending the party in disaster. Even though Holly enjoys it, and she and Greg become a couple and spend the rest of the summer together with Rowley and the rest of the Heffleys. It did go well. Now it's time for the last one. This one's called The Long Haul. During the summer, the Heffleys dine at a restaurant called Corny's, where Susan announces the family plan for a road trip to attend Meemaw's 90th birthday party, much to Roderick and Greg's dismay. Susan promises to make it fun for them. Greg is then sent in to rescue Manny from inside a tube in the play area, but ends up in a ball pit with a diaper stuck to his head. And freaking out while searching for Manny, he subsequently becomes famous when the footage is posted on the internet, becoming an embarrassing meme called Diaper Hands. Later, Greg learns that the gaming convention Player Expo is taking place not far from Meemaw's house in Indianapolis. His favorite internet star, Mac Digby, will be attending, so Greg plans to sneak off from the road trip and secretly go to the Players Expo to meet Digby and get in one of his videos to gain his popularity and put the Diaper Hands meme behind him. As soon as the Heffleys hit the road, everyone's phones are immediately confiscated by Susan, who claims the road trip to be absolutely technology free. Now, if that was me and my phone got confiscated, my health would immediately decline. Like, my phone is my only life form. Okay, that may be a joke, but I'm serious about my phone. That night, at a motel, Greg secretly gets his phone from the car. Later, while he and Roderick are relaxing in the hot tub, Roderick hears a notification from Greg's cell phone and discovers his plans to go to the Player Expo. However, Greg convinces Roderick not to tell Susan, telling him that they have a Rock Band video game competition with a prize of $1,000. Liking the idea, Roderick opts to go with him, as he could win enough money to get his loaded diaper van fixed. Later that night, Greg investigates a loud noise. A couple of kids repeatedly slamming a cleaning cart into a wall belonging to a family, which he dubs the Beardos, due to their father's beard. Scolding them for making a racket, he threatens to have them thrown out. Their father comes out and nearly gets hit by the cart when his daughter rolls it at Greg, but it misses him and damages their van. She blames Greg, telling her father that he also called him a fat beardo, causing him to plot revenge on Greg. Back on the road the next day, the Heffleys attend a county fair where Manny wins a piglet to keep as a pet. Mr. Beardo, who is also there with his family, sees Greg and pursues him, but Greg manages to lose him on the alien abduction ride. The next day, a work call and the Piglet's craziness lead to the Heffleys nearly crashing their car on a bridge, and they donate the Piglet to a petting zoo, much to Manny's dismay. While Greg reroutes the GPS to the Player Expo, early the next morning, Roderick and Greg leave a note telling Frank and Susan that they are out buying a gift for Meemaw. But they sneak out to the Player Expo instead. Thinking they are missing, Susan calls the police, but Frank spots Greg and Roderick being interviewed on TV at the expo. While Roderick does not win at the rock band tournament, Greg sees Mac in a video game competition, only to learn he has to wait in a extremely long queue in order to meet him. With not enough time to do that, Greg has Roderick record him on the stage behind him to make it seem like he and Mac have collaborated together to boost his popularity. But he accidentally unplugs the power to Mac's screen. Susan arrives and accidentally reveals to Mac that Greg is Diaper Hands, humiliating him in the process. She opens up, saying all she wanted it was a nice road trip to bring them closer together, and accuses him of not caring. Fed up with her being so controlling, Greg calls her out on her hypocrisy and naivety, to which she relents and gives him his phone back, giving up on the technology free trip. Good move, Susan. Back on the road, Greg finds out that Roderick accidentally used the front-facing camera while recording him on stage, meaning his plan was all for nothing. The tarp on the motorboat attached to the family's minivan, which contains all their belongings, then blows open and their belongings fly out. The Beardos then show up and begin stealing them as payback, including a scrapbook as a birthday gift for Meemaw. The Heffleys chase after the Beardos, but get stuck in a traffic jam. Greg reconciles with Susan, and afterwards they decide to get out of the traffic jam by taking a back road. They come across the Beardos' van at another motel and retrieve their belongings. Mr. Beardo then finds Greg hiding in the shower from him and attempts to grab Greg. But Greg squirts bath soap into Mr. Beardo's eyes, and Greg escapes. Frank steals their keys to their van and throws them into a dumpster to prevent the Beardos from chasing them. As the Heffleys drive off, Mr. Beardo goes into the dumpster to get his keys, but instead gets a diaper stuck to his hand, recreating Greg's Diaper Hands meme. The Heffleys manage to reach Meemaw's birthday party with Greg in the boat, with it detached from the car, and everyone enjoys the party. After the party, the car is still broken, and a tow truck driver stops by, but he only speaks Spanish. Though Manny is able to communicate with him from a Spanish CD they heard earlier in the trip, he guides them to the petting zoo and he retrieves the piglet. Greg then says that Frank got time off from work to spend time with his family, and Roderick was able to get a new van. While the trip was far hardly perfect, it was eventful, and he is excited for next year. Susan then steps in to say they will be flying. In a mid-credit scene, Greg and Rowley take selfies with two teenage girls who recognize Greg as Diaper Hands. Much to Roderick's jealousy, therefore, Greg is now happy being Diaper Hands. Now, The Long Haul was the only Diary of a Wimpy Kid movie I've never seen. And from listening to this, it does sound interesting. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed it, and let me know if you've seen Diary of a Wimpy Kid. And if you like the movie. So, peace out!